I died on June 6, 1944, at exactly 6:47 in the morning, and I can still feel the cold water filling my lungs. My name is Michael Patterson. I'm 34 years old. I work as an accountant in Denver, Colorado, and for most of my life, I thought I was crazy. The nightmares started when I was 5 years old. Not the kind of nightmares kids usually have, with monsters under the bed or getting lost in a store. No, mine were different. Mine were memories. I would wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, tasting salt water and gunpowder. My parents took me to therapists, psychiatrists, even a neurologist who ran every test imaginable. They found nothing wrong with me. The dreams continued. Every single night, the same sequence of events played out in my mind with crystal clarity. A beach, gray skies, the deafening roar of artillery, and always, that freezing water pulling me down into darkness. For years, I tried to suppress it. I told myself it was just an overactive imagination, maybe something I saw in a movie as a kid that got stuck in my subconscious. I threw myself into normal life. Got good grades, went to college, landed a stable job, got married. But the memories never left. They were always there, lurking just beneath the surface of my consciousness, waiting for quiet moments to resurface. The turning point came 3 years ago, on a random Tuesday afternoon. I was having lunch with my wife Sarah at our favorite diner when I saw an elderly man wearing a baseball cap. The cap had an embroidered patch, Omaha Beach survivor. My heart stopped. My hands started shaking so violently I dropped my fork. Sarah grabbed my arm, asking what was wrong, but I couldn't speak. I just stared at that man, and suddenly I wasn't in the diner anymore. I was 22 years old, wearing a soaking wet uniform that weighed 100 pounds. My name was James Sullivan. Private First Class, 16th Infantry Regiment, 1st Infantry Division. And I was drowning off the coast of Normandy, France. The memory hit me like a physical blow. I could feel everything. The rough wool of my uniform chafing against my skin. The weight of my pack and rifle pulling me down. The taste of seawater mixed with blood. Most of all, I could feel the terror, the absolute certainty that these were my last moments on Earth. I was experiencing death itself, and it was more real than anything in my present life. Sarah drove me home. I spent the next 3 days in bed, unable to function. The floodgates had opened, and the memories poured through in overwhelming waves. I remembered my entire life as James Sullivan. Growing up on a farm in Iowa. My mother's apple pie. My father teaching me to drive the tractor. Enlisting after Pearl Harbor because it felt like the right thing to do. Basic training at Fort Benning. The letters I wrote to my girl back home, Betty, promising I'd come back and marry her. I remembered the crossing on the ship to England, how seasick I was. The pre-invasion briefing where they showed us maps and told us our mission. The poker games we played to pass the time. My buddy Frank, who was terrified but tried to hide it with jokes. The chaplain who prayed with us the night before D-Day. I remembered every face, every conversation, every smell and sound. And I remembered June 6th with such clarity it still takes my breath away. We boarded the landing craft at 3 a.m. The English Channel was rough, waves tossing our boat like a toy. Men were throwing up over the sides. Some were praying, others sat in silence, staring at nothing. I kept my hand on my rifle, going over my training in my head. When we hit the beach, get to the seawall. Find cover, return fire, move forward. Simple instructions for an impossible task. The coast of France appeared through the pre-dawn darkness. I could see the cliffs, the fortifications, the obstacles in the water. Explosions lit up the beach in bursts of orange and white. The sound of artillery was constant, a rolling thunder that I felt in my chest. Our boat circled, waiting for the signal to go in. At 6:30, we got the order. The boat turned toward shore and opened the throttle. We were going in. Men around me tightened their grips on their weapons. Frank was next to me, whispering, "Hail Mary," full of grace, over and over. I wanted to tell him it would be okay, but my throat was too tight to speak. The machine gun fire started when we were still 200 yards out. I heard the distinctive rattle of German MG-42s, what we called Hitler's buzzsaw. Bullets hit the water around us, sending up little geysers. Then they hit the boat. Metal pinged and clanged. Someone behind me screamed. The boat lurched to the left, and I realized we'd been hit. The ramp was supposed to drop when we reached the shore. It dropped early. We were still in chest-deep water, maybe 50 yards from the beach. The boat commander was yelling, "Go! Go! Go!" Men at the front jumped into the water and immediately went under, pulled down by their heavy equipment. Others tried to move forward, but the water was too deep, the current too strong. I was in the third row. I saw what was happening to the men in front of me, and I absolutely knew, that I wasn't going to make it. The thought was strangely calm. This was it. This was where my life ended. I was going to die in the water off a beach in France, thousands of miles from home, and Betty would get a letter saying I was lost in action. But I jumped anyway, because that's what you did. That's what we all did. The water was shockingly cold. My feet touched bottom for a second, then I was swept sideways by the current. My pack was pulling me down. I tried to keep my rifle above water, but a wave hit me in the face and I swallowed seawater. My lungs burned. I managed to get my feet under me again and pushed up, gasping for air. That's when the mortar round hit. I never saw it coming. One moment I was struggling to move forward through the water. The next moment there was an explosion and I was underwater again. Something had hit my left side. I didn't feel pain at first, just impact. The water around me turned red. I tried to swim, but my left arm wouldn't work. I couldn't feel my left leg. I went under. The weight of my equipment pulled me straight down. I tried to reach the buckles to release my pack, but my left arm was useless and my right hand couldn't find the straps. The water was murky with sand and blood. I couldn't tell which way was up. My lungs were screaming for air. Then I inhaled, not on purpose. My body just did it, an involuntary gasp for oxygen that wasn't there. Water rushed into my lungs. The pain was excruciating, like my chest was being crushed in a vice. I tried to cough it out, but that only made me inhale more water. I was drowning. I was dying. The strange thing is, after the initial panic, there was a moment of calm. The pain faded. The sounds of battle became distant and muffled. I could see light filtering down through the water above me, and I thought how beautiful it looked, like sunlight through stained glass in a church. I thought about my mother and father. I thought about Betty. I hoped they would know I loved them. I hoped they would understand I had tried my best. Then everything went dark, and then, somehow, I was being born again. The next thing I remember is being a baby in a hospital in Denver in 1991. My new parents, who I would grow up calling Mom and Dad, holding me for the first time. But somewhere deep inside, the memories of James Sullivan were still there, waiting. When the memory fully came back to me at that diner, I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to find out if James Sullivan was real. If my memories were actual memories and not some elaborate fantasy my mind had constructed. I started researching. I knew details that I shouldn't know. James Sullivan, Private First Class, 16th Infantry Regiment, 1st Infantry Division. Killed in action, June 6, 1944, Omaha Beach. I knew his hometown was Webster City, Iowa. I knew he had enlisted in January 1942. I knew he had a girl named Betty back home. It took me 3 months, but I found him. The National Archives had his service record. James Patrick Sullivan, serial number 37428156. Everything matched. His unit, his rank, his date of death. They had listed him as killed in action, body not recovered, presumed drowned during the landing at Omaha Beach. I kept digging. I found a local historian in Webster City who helped me access old records. James Sullivan's family had owned a farm outside of town. His father was named Thomas. His mother was named Margaret. I knew these names. I remembered them. I remembered the layout of their farmhouse, the big oak tree in the front yard where I used to climb as a boy. The historian sent me a photograph. It was James Sullivan's high school graduation picture from 1939. When I opened that email and saw the photo, I had to sit down. I was looking at a stranger's face, and yet I recognized it. I knew that face. I had seen it in mirrors, in reflection in windows, in photographs that Betty had taken before I shipped out. It wasn't my face now, but it had been my face then. Then came the biggest shock. Betty was still alive. Elizabeth Morrison, formerly Elizabeth Chen, living in a retirement home in Des Moines. She was 98 years old. The historian told me she sometimes spoke to students about her experience as a young woman during the war. She had never married. She had kept James Sullivan's letters for 80 years. I drove to Iowa. I had to meet her. I had to know if somehow, impossibly, this could all be verified. Sarah came with me, supportive but worried. She'd watched me go through this obsession for months. She was afraid of what might happen if this turned out to be nothing but coincidence and imagination. The retirement home was a pleasant place, well maintained, with gardens and a sunny common room. A nurse brought Betty out in a wheelchair. She was tiny, shrunken with age, but her eyes were sharp and clear. I introduced myself as a researcher interested in D-Day stories. I didn't tell her about the memories. Not yet. We talked for an hour. She told me about James, about how they'd met at a church social, about their plans to get married when he came home. She showed me his letters, yellowed with age, still in their envelopes. She read me parts of them, and I heard my own voice, my own words, from 80 years ago. Dear Betty, the food here is terrible but the boys are good. We had a poker game last night and I won $3. I'm saving it to take you dancing when I get home. I had written that. I remembered writing that. I remembered winning that poker game, beating Frank with a full house, aces over kings. Then Betty said something that made my blood run cold. James had a scar on his right shoulder blade, she told me. Shaped like a crescent moon. He got it falling off the tractor when he was 12. He was embarrassed by it, but I thought it made him human. Perfect people don't have scars. I have a birthmark on my right shoulder blade, shaped like a crescent moon. I've had it my entire life. I rolled up my sleeve and turned around, showing her my back. The nurse gasped. Betty went very still. Then she reached out with a trembling hand and touched the mark. James? She whispered. Is that you, James? I started crying. I couldn't help it. I turned around and took her hand, and suddenly I wasn't Michael anymore. I was James, and I was looking at Betty, my Betty, the girl I'd loved and lost and never stopped loving even through death and rebirth. I'm so sorry, I told her. I'm so sorry I never came home. I tried so hard to make it to the beach. Betty was crying too. I waited, she said. I waited for you. Part of me always knew you'd come back somehow. We talked for hours. I told her things only James could have known. The songs we used to dance to. The place by the river where we used to meet. The promise I'd made to take her to California to see the ocean. Every detail I gave her, she confirmed. She would nod and say, yes, that's right, or, I remember that, and each confirmation was like a piece of a puzzle falling into place. I told her about D-Day. About the landing craft and the cold water and the machine gun fire. About Frank and the other men in my unit. About the mortar round and the drowning. She listened with tears streaming down her face, and when I finished, she squeezed my hand and said, "You're home now. You finally made it home." Betty passed away 6 months later, peacefully in her sleep. I was there with her, holding her hand. Just before she died, she opened her eyes and smiled at me and said, "I'll see you again, James. Next time, we'll get it right." And I believe her. I believe that somehow, across time and death and rebirth, love finds a way to continue. Living with these memories has changed me. I'm still Michael Patterson. I still work as an accountant, still live in Denver with Sarah, who has been incredibly understanding through all of this. But I'm also James Sullivan. I carry his experiences, his loves, his fears, his death. I am two people in one body, 2 lifetimes compressed into a single consciousness. I've connected with other people who have similar memories of past lives. There are more of us than you might think. Scientists call it reincarnation, though that word doesn't quite capture the complexity of it. I call it continuity of consciousness. The soul, or whatever you want to call the core of who we are, doesn't end when the body dies. It continues, carrying forward memories and experiences, even when those memories are buried deep in the subconscious. The nightmares have stopped. Once I acknowledged the memories, once I verified them and accepted them, they lost their power to terrorize me. I still dream of Omaha Beach sometimes, but now those dreams are bittersweet rather than frightening. I dream of the farm in Iowa, of Betty's smile, of the life I had before it was cut short. I also dream of finishing what James started. He wanted to come home, to marry Betty, to live a good life. I'm living that life now, in a different time, in a different body, but living it nonetheless. Every day I wake up is a day James didn't get. Every moment I spend with people I love is a gift he was denied. I try to honor that. I try to live fully, for both of us. People ask me if I'm afraid of dying now that I remember dying before. The answer is no. Death is not an ending. It's a transition. It's painful and frightening in the moment, but it's not the end of consciousness, not the end of who we are. We go on. We come back. We get new chances to live, to love, to learn. James Sullivan died on Omaha Beach on June 6, 1944. But part of him lives on in me. His courage, his love for Betty, his determination to do what was right even when it was terrifying. Those things didn't die with him. They're part of me now, woven into the fabric of who I am. I visited Normandy last year. Sarah and I went together. We walked on Omaha Beach at low tide, when the sand is exposed and you can see the distance those men had to cross under fire. It's much longer than I imagined. The cliffs are much higher. The obstacles are much more formidable. Standing there, understanding the geography of that day, I don't know how anyone survived. I found the spot where I died. I don't know how I knew, but I did. It was about 50 yards from shore, in water that at low tide was only ankle deep. I stood there for a long time, looking out at the ocean, thinking about James and all the other men who died there. There's a memorial on the beach, thousands of names carved in stone. James Sullivan's name is there. I touched it, and I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known I was missing. Thank you, I told him. Told myself. Told whatever force in the universe gives us the chance to live more than once. Thank you for showing me that love doesn't end, that courage matters, that sacrifice means something. If you're reading this or watching this video, maybe you have memories too. Maybe you have dreams that feel too real to be just dreams. Maybe you know things you shouldn't know, or feel connections to places and times you've never experienced in this life. Don't dismiss it. Don't think you're crazy. You might be remembering something real. You might be carrying forward the experiences of a previous life. And if that's true, then death is not something to fear. It's just another transition, another chapter in a story that's much longer than one single lifetime. We are all more than we seem. We are all connected to past and future versions of ourselves, threads in a tapestry that stretches across time. James Sullivan's story didn't end in the cold waters off Normandy. It continued. It's continuing still, through me, through these words, through the memory of a love that transcended death itself. And someday, when my time as Michael Patterson ends, I'll continue too. Maybe I'll remember this life. Maybe I'll find Betty again, in a new form, in a new time. Maybe we'll finally get that dance we were promised. Until then, I live for both of us. I love for both of us. And I remember. I will always remember. The cold water, the gray sky, the sound of artillery, and the moment consciousness slipped away, only to return again, carrying forward the truth that we are eternal, that we are connected, and that nothing, not even death, can truly end who we are. If you have your own story of past life memories, I want to hear it. Share it in the comments below. Let's create a community of people who understand that life is longer and stranger and more beautiful than we ever imagined. Let's honor the lives we've lived, the people we've been, and the eternal nature of consciousness itself. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for letting me honor James Sullivan's memory. And thank you for being open to the possibility that we are all so much more than we appear to be. Subscribe to this channel for more true stories of past life memories, spiritual experiences, and the mysteries of consciousness. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. And remember, you are eternal. You have always been here, and you always will be, in one form or another. This is Michael Patterson, remembering James Sullivan, signing off. Until next time, Stay curious, stay open, and never stop asking questions about the true nature of reality.